Welcome to a special presentation of Billy Ho Sports, celebrating the history of the Kentucky Derby. For a century and a half, the Kentucky Derby has been more than just a horse race. It's a symbol of tradition, honor, greatness. In this episode, we'll explore the rise of the iconic Derby champions from the mid to late 1900s. We begin in 1950. The Kentucky Derby saw middle ground nearly achieve glory. His Kentucky Derby victory with an apprentice jockey laid the groundwork for an unlikely Triple Crown bid. A fun fact, Hall of Fame jockey Eddie Arcaro was to have the mount on that winner, but chose to ride Hill Price instead. After middle ground won the Kentucky Derby, he went on to race in the Preakness, and it would be Arcaro and Hill Prince denying the Colt the second leg of the Triple Crown as they defeated him. In his defense, it was a rough trip, but he did bounce back to go on to win the Belmont, giving him 2 of the 3 legs of the Triple Crown. In 1951, the Kentucky Derby, Count Turf was set to do battle with half-brother and top contender Counterpoint. Count Turf was lumped into the 51-1 field bet, so he wasn't considered a real threat. But this underdog would go on to prove them all wrong and pulled away late to win the race easily, marking his place in Derby history. 1952 saw Hall of Fame jockey Eddie Arcaro back in the winner's circle with Hill Gale. The Colts' triumphant win in the Kentucky Derby was part of a dominant streak for Calumet Farm, which won multiple derbies during the 40s and 50s. That brings us into the 1953 Kentucky Derby, titled The Upset Heard Around the Racing World. The victim of that 1953 Derby was Native Dancer, nicknamed the Gray Ghost of Sagamore, a reference to the owner Alfred G. Vanderbilt's Sagamore Farm. Native Dancer was widely considered racing's first television star. It's fitting that his nemesis would also be a horse named Dark Star. The 25-1 Colt got the drop early on the 3-5 favorite, jumped to the lead, and never looked back. That brings us to the 80th running of the Kentucky Derby. May 1st, 1954, saw the smallest horse in the race come up in the biggest moment. Weighing just 870 pounds, Determined overcame a rough start to run down the front-running Hasty Road and win by 11, making him the first gray to win the Kentucky Derby. 1955, 2-year-old champion Nashua and the West Coast star Swaps set the stage for one of the greatest East versus West showdowns in Kentucky Derby history. Bill Shoemaker in the irons, Swaps setting a solid pace, while Nashua and Eddie Arcaro stalked in third, ready to pounce. As they turned for home, Nashua ranged up to challenge, but Swaps had more left in the tank. He powered away for a decisive length-and-a-half victory, giving Bill Shoemaker the first of his 4 Kentucky Derby wins. 1966, 2-time champion Needles made history as the first Kentucky Derby winner born in Florida. Running near the back of the pack, 16th out of 17th horses, he unleashed his trademark late charge, reeling in Fabius down the stretch to win by 3/4 of a length under jockey Dave Erb. 1957 Kentucky Derby stands as one of the most dramatic in history. The field featured future legends like Gallant Man, Round Table, and Bold Ruler. The race is best remembered for an infamous moment in Derby lore. In the stretch, Bill Shoemaker and Gallant Man had the race in hand, surged ahead of Iron Leeds when, in a stunning mistake, Shoemaker briefly stood up in the irons at the 16th pole, thinking he had the race won. Realizing his mistake, He urged Gallant Man back into stride, but too little too late as Iron Liege passed and held on to win by a nose, giving Bill Hartack his first of his record-tying 5 Kentucky Derby wins. The 1958 Kentucky Derby, held on May 3rd, marked the 84th running of this prestigious race at Churchill Downs. Emerging victorious was Tim Tam, a Dark Bay colt. Under the guidance of trainer Horace Jimmy Jones and ridden by Ismael Valenzuela, Tim Tam ran the mile and a quarter race on a muddy track in a time of 2:05. The 1959 Kentucky Derby was won by Tommy Lee, and no, not the drummer from Motley Crue, a British-bred colt who became the only second foreign-bred horse to capture the Run for the Roses. Facing a very competitive field, including the highly regarded Sword Dancer, Tommy Lee delivered a thrilling performance under jockey Bill Shoemaker. The race turned into a dramatic stretch duel between Tommy Lee and Sword Dancer, the two colts battling it out head-to-head down the home stretch in a heart-pounding finish. Tommy Lee managed to hold off Sword Dancer by just a nose. That was Shoemaker's second Kentucky Derby win. 1960, with a Hall of Famer in the saddle, Venetian Way scored his signature victory for his soft-spoken owner and big dreaming trainer, with his ultimate legacy coming in the form of another historic moment for America's most famous race. Venetian Way won the 1960 Derby in dominant fashion, pulling away 3.5 length victory with Bill Hartack in the reins. Venetian Way turned the tables on Ballyache, who had beaten him in the Florida Derby. However, he did struggle in the remaining Triple Crown races. He finished second in the Preakness and then did not hit the board in the Belmont. 1961 Kentucky Derby was won by Carrie Back, a small but tenacious colt known for his powerful late closing kick. Going into the Derby, Carrie Back was already well known for dramatic come-from-behind finishes. True to form, he dropped far back early on in the race, trailing much of the field, but as they rounded the far turn, he unleashed his signature late charge, weaving through horses and surging past Crozier in the stretch to win by 3/4 of a length in time. 1962 Kentucky Derby was won in dominant fashion by a decidedly, strikingly gray colt, owned by El Peco Ranch and trained by Horatio Lureau. Bill Hartack, the jockey, decidedly set a new Derby record for the time, breaking the previous mark set by Whirlaway in 1941. 1963 Chateauguay was not considered the favorite, as the heavily favored Candy Spots was expected to dominate. However, Chateauguay proved his mettle, coming from off the pace in the final stretch. Despite a slow start, Chateauguay surged ahead in the final furlong and overtook Candy Spots, winning by a solid length and a half. Chateauguay went on to finish second in the Preakness Stakes and did not race in the Belmont. May 2nd, 1964, Northern Dancer, one of the most influential racehorses in history, both on the track and as a sire, entered the Kentucky Derby as one of the top contenders, but wasn't the favorite. In the race, Northern Dancer sat close to the pace, took the lead at the top of the stretch, and held off Hill Rise to win by a neck in a then record time of 2 minutes flat. This record stood the test of time until Secretariat's famous sub-2-minute Derby in '73. Like many contenders, he went on to win that leg 2 of the Preakness, but failed in the Belmont. 1965 Kentucky Derby took place May 1st. The race was won by Lucky Debonair, a bay colt owned by Miss Ada Rice, ridden by Billy Shoemaker. Lucky Debonair had established himself as one of the top 3-year-olds heading into the Derby. He took command in the race, setting a strong pace. In the stretch, he held off a late charging Dapper Dan and won by a neck. And that was Bill Shoemaker's second Derby win. 1966 Derby took place May 7. The race was won by Kauai King, ridden by Don Brumfield. Kauai King broke sharply from the gate, immediately went to the lead, setting strong pace figures, and despite a good challenge from Blue Skyer and Abe's Hope, he held on strongly in the stretch by a half a length. Also went on to win the Preakness, but unable to win the Belmont, as many of these horses have been doing since Citation last won the Triple Crown. May 6th, 1967, Churchill Downs. The race was won by Proud Clarion. Longshot, trained by Lloyd Gentry Jr., owned by Darby Dan Farm, ridden by Bobby Ursay. The heavy favorite was Damascus in that race, a future Hall of Famer who would go on to dominate the three-year-old season afterwards. Proud Clarion stayed mid-pack early, made a powerful move in the stretch to overtake Barb's Delight, and held off Damascus, who finished third after a wide trip. May 4th, 1968, remains one of the most controversial derbies in history due to the first ever disqualification of a derby winner. Dancer's Image, ridden by Bobby Ursay, crossed the finish line first, defeating Forward Pass by a length and a half. However, his post-race drug test revealed a banned substance. So several days later, judgment was handed down. Dancer's Image was disqualified. Forward Pass declared the official winner, making it the only Kentucky Derby to date where the first place finisher was stripped of the title due to a drug violation at the time. Forward Pass took full advantage of the crown as he went on to win the Preakness next, but unfortunately was a runner-up in the Belmont. 1969 Kentucky Derby lacked a field, but not the talent. With just 8 horses lined up for Derby 95, the ending provided all the drama. As Top Night began to fade around the stretch, Bill Hartack moved Majestic Prince into position, passing him, and heads up against Arts and Letters. Majestic Prince wins by a head over Arts and Letters. He then goes on to win the Preakness, and his connections were unsure to race him in the Belmont, citing the horse's fatigue and the grueling 3-race event, but public pressure pushed them into going. He did finish second in the race, very valiant effort. He retired with that being the only loss of his entire career. The 1970 Kentucky Derby took place on May 2nd, 1970 at Churchill Downs. Dust Commander entered the Derby as under-the-radar contender. The favorites, My Dad George, NASCRA, but Dust Commander saved ground along the rail, moved up steady, and took command in the stretch from the rail, pulling away to win by 5 lengths. A very decisive Kentucky Derby victory. Much of that credit goes to jockey Make Manganello, who I was able to meet last year as part of the Kentucky Derby Museum's celebration of 150 days to 150 Derby. I wasn't prepared to speak with Mike, but he was kind enough to talk to me about the race and his horse. So the audio is poor, but Please introduce yourself, Mike.
I'm Mike Manganello. I'm a retired jockey. I won the Kentucky Derby in 1970 on a horse called Horstman. He wasn't one of the favorites in the race, but for me, he was
favorite. So what kind of horse was he? Was he an easy horse to get along with? Did what you tell him to do? You know, back him up, moving forward?
He responded whatever way I wanted him. He was really,
That's great.
a fairly easy horse to ride.
Excellent. How did we fare in the other races after?
He only run in the Preakness, but he injured himself in the Preakness, so he didn't get to,
Had to be retired?
yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate it very much, Mike. Congratulations on your win, and good luck in the future.
All right, have a good day.
Okay, thanks.
The 1971 Kentucky Derby took place on May 1st. The race was won by Cananero II, a Venezuelan colt who shocked the racing world with an improbable victory. And despite arriving at Churchill Downs underweight after the long, grueling journey from Venezuela, Manganello II exploded from the back of the pack, weaving through traffic and storming past the leaders in the stretch, and wins by nearly 4 lengths in a stunning upset. Was not a one-hit wonder, as he went on to dominate the Preakness, setting the track record for the time, but as the public has seen over the several years, 2 for 2 Derby horses winning the Belmont proved to be a bit too much, as fatigue led to a 4th place finish. That leads us into the 1972 Kentucky Derby on May 6th. The race was won by Riva Ridge, a colt who helped revive Meadow Stable's glory just a year before the famous stablemate Secretariat took the racing world by storm. Riva Ridge took the lead early, set a steady pace, and never looked back. He widened his advantage in the stretch and won by 3 lengths going away. The win gave jockey Ron Turcotte and trainer Lucien Lauren their first Derby win together, a partnership that would go on to become legendary, as you will see. Well, the moment we've all been waiting for, the 1973 Kentucky Derby, held on May 5th at Churchill Downs. A horse by the name of Secretariat, would be ridden by Ron Turcotte, came into that race the heavy favorite. Now, things did look a little dicey for Big Red after a slow break, but he found his groove quite quick enough. In a remarkable move, he passed the entire field in the backstretch and then took over the lead and sat down, pulling away in the final stretch, winning by 2.5 lengths over Sham, setting the bar for the first sub-2-minute Kentucky Derby in history. Of course, he then went on to win the Preakness in fairly comfortable fashion, but not quite the blowaway that I'd remembered. It then came all down to the Belmont. Fans have been clamoring for a Triple Crown winner for 25 years. It has been since Citation won the 3 legs. So an amazing display of speed and stamina. Secretariat did not disappoint. He decimated the Belmont field by a whopping 31 lengths. And over the years, we have seen well over 50 times a horse has won those first 2 legs of a Triple Crown only to fall short at the Belmont. And that is just such a tough 3rd leg of the race. And that's probably why Chick Anderson coined the phrase "tremendous machine" when he referred to Secretariat in the Belmont. 1974 brought us the Centennial Kentucky Derby, the 100th anniversary. It held the 2nd largest crowd in the history of the United States thoroughbred racing world, the largest field also of 23 horses. Very wide open race, and as they turned for home in what looked like a full-on stampede down the stretch, Cannonade emerges from the middle of the racetrack and takes the lead, goes on to win the Derby. Comfortable margin. The Centennial Derby gave us an unforgettable spectacle, and as always, Churchill Downs delivers a moment for the ages. I'd like to thank you for watching, and we shall see you soon.